Hey folks, I hope you all had an awesome autumn. I'm a little bit late with my MeshBrush update, as I had some stress these past weeks, but stuff got back to normal fortunately, and I'm happy to announce that I just finished uploading the new MeshBrush 1.5 package to the asset store for review and approval. In the meantime, I'd like to show you some of the things that have been added. Or actually, I'll show you all. This is going to be some sort of mixture between a release notes video and a tutorial on how to use everything new. In case you are a new user of MeshBrush, just watch the previous videos, since these still apply. Please excuse my voice, I'm a little bit ill. So, first things first, MeshBrush 1.5 comes with a completely reorganized UI in the inspector. It is now much cleaner and well organized than before. The set of meshes to paint got its own custom design in the inspector, thus replacing the standard array look that was there before. Here you can add elements to the set by clicking on this plus button here, and as you can see, this adds an empty element to the list. This minus button here removes it. It removes the bottommost element from the list and clears it upwards, as you can see here. When you want to clear the list from all elements and start anew, just press the C button, which stands for clear. The X button clears all field values of the list. It does not empty the list like the clear function does, but it only empties the fields, like this. The meshes and prefabs can be assigned just like before, by dragging them into the field, or by clicking here and selecting them manually. Next, I moved the Precision Placement Mode button to right here, under the set of meshes to paint. It makes much more sense here. And then we have the brush settings fold out, and well, everything has got its own group and fold out in the inspector in MeshBrush 1.5, as you can see. Also, the menu item for initializing MeshBrush got its own group inside the Game Object menu. I also subdivided the help section inside the inspector into smaller chunks of text based on category. The remaining things have stayed the same, except for the newly arrived template system and the global painting mode, which is what I'm going to show you next. I got emails and feedback from you users out there that you would like to somehow be able to transfer your favorite MeshBrush settings to other scenes, projects and so on without any trouble. So I started thinking about an intelligent approach for an easy solution that can handle this kind of task. And that's when I came up with the idea of this template system. Look, over here in the inspector we have the template section. In here, you can now save your current MeshBrush settings to a proprietary .meshbrush file, which can then be loaded up later when you want to override the current settings with the ones stored in a template file. Note, all settings are stored in the template file, but the meshes assigned in the set of meshes to paint are stored under their path. So the path to the actual file on the disk. This means that if you move, rename or delete one or more meshes assigned to a set of meshes to paint in a previously saved template, you will probably have to reassign that or those values and resave the template. I cannot modify all users' template files in the project each time a mesh gets renamed or moved elsewhere. So basically, if you have a well-organized project and always keep your meshes and stuff you want to paint in persistent folders and don't rename everything every 2 seconds, you should be alright. Also note that when migrating a template file to another project, paths to meshes can't be kept for the same reasons. All the other settings perfectly save and load though. So here you can actually see me do it. You click the save to disk icon here when you're happy with your setup, and then you get this file dialog here where you can choose a place to store your template file. The default directory here is the saved templates folder inside the MeshBrush folder. But really, you could store it anywhere inside your project. Then, to load up a template file, just click on this icon here and select the template you want to load. You can then load it up, and now here's something about template files themselves. I don't want to get too deep into their anatomy, but they are actually quite simple. So well, they are just XML files, you see. So you could technically open them with Notepad and edit the settings there too if you want, but if it's not needed and you don't know what you're doing, leave these files as they are. That is also why I chose the .meshbrush extension. This way you cannot accidentally try and load up some other XML file you got in your project. I mean, you never know. If you edit the template file anyways and mess up its structure, you will not be able to restore its original shape if you do not remember it. And you will definitely get a deserialization error. But now something completely different. Let's get over to this part on the right. When you start having many MeshBrush templates in a project, I thought it'd be useful for you users out there to pick and save your favorite ones in a quick access list. So that's the favorites list here. When you add a MeshBrush template to it, it adds that template to the favorites list and you can quickly load it up at any time. This way you can also switch between brushes without having to add too many multiple MeshBrush instances to an object. The 3 dots next to the list entry are there to reassign a broken connection with the template file after removal or translation to somewhere else in the project, or also if you just simply want to reassign another template. The favorites list is stored in a standard XML file inside the MeshBrush folder, or more precisely inside the editor folder along with the editor scripts. It should stay there and it shouldn't be renamed, and this is probably the only thing that is absolutely strictly forced in MeshBrush. And I apologize for the lack of freedom in handling these, but there shall only be one global favorites list. I mean, it is a favorites list after all, right? So remember, do not move or rename your entire MeshBrush folder, and do not touch the favorites list XML file in terms of path, in terms of file name and structure. And by structure I mean don't do something stupid like this, and do not mess up its structure. The list is going to be broken, I guarantee you that. So you can open up the file and look up the paths if you wish, but as I said, it is probably best if thou leavest this file alone. It gets updated automatically, and if you still manage to mess it up, don't worry, a new one will be generated, overriding the old broken one. Then there is also a new global painting mode, also programmed on user request and based on your feedback mails. I have to say, I'm really happy how it turned out. Thanks again to the few users who came up to me with this idea in their feedback mails. I really appreciate it. It took me a while to figure out the best approach, but I wanted it to be perfect, so I started off with the idea of making an undockable MeshBrush instance to globally paint meshes, you know. But as I finished programming the interface, I noticed that it was horrible. Look at this screenshot, for instance. You had one window and then still another instance selected in the inspector, thus having the floating window become useless. This is because of the way MeshBrush is built from the ground up. It really is component based, guys. So I got rid of that code, and then I came up with this much better solution. If you want to paint meshes globally in a scene, you can have a global painting mode in MeshBrush, and you initialize this by clicking on the game object menu and going under MeshBrush. Then you would click on global painting. Now, the first thing you see is the inspector is slightly different. This is because you are now in global painting mode, which means that you are no longer painting on a single object's surface, but you are now painting onto, well, everything. And so we need some control over where we want our meshes to end up and where not, right? And that's what this inspector piece up here is all about. Layer-based painting. Here you can select and deselect all layers on which you want your meshes to be placed, or respectively not be placed. Ticking a layer allows for mesh placement. Unticking it filters it out. The brush won't even appear on its surface. It is completely excluded out from the raycast. There's one particular exception with this though. The ignore raycast layer is always ignored by MeshBrush, even if it is ticked. This is because it is one of the Unity built-in layers and, well, it ignores our raycasts. And MeshBrush needs raycasting in order to work. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and are happy with this new update. MeshBrush version 1.5, guys. Should be available in the next few days for download on the Unity Asset Store. The links are in the description below, and before I wrap this up, I'd like to apologize for still not having finished the overlap filtering functionality that I promised I would include in this update. It's a difficult thing to do correctly, and I don't want unfinished or bad stuff, for that matter, in my software. So I'd rather wait till 1.6 or 1.7 and then have it perfect. But don't worry, it's on its way and I'm working on it. Thank you for watching and have a good one. Cheers!